Family. Welcome, family. Glad to be back with you for another episode. You know, I'm always excited to be able to build with you and share and create this healing space for ourselves. So if you're new here, you gotta forgive me. I'm at last minute trying to put this up together. I just took my do-rag off, so. But if this is your first time here on Soul Swami Live, this is a channel where we discuss all things healing. It revolves around healing and reconnecting to our inner child and all types of things. So, excuse me. So we generally meet here every Tuesday and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thursday is generally a spinoff show of our Tuesday show. Thursday is book club. It allows us to be able to reconnect to that child in us. So by having somebody read to you. So I just read to you. We don't do a lot of discussing. It really is more audio book vibes, but gives more of a realistic feel because you're getting live reading too. You can find us on TikTok with a live show. I'm on every social media, but the live show is on TikTok, not TikTok, scratch. It is on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. It used to be on TikTok, but for some reason TikTok just bans me, saying my content doesn't meet the content that they would like on their platform, which is very interesting. Very interesting. But I do share clips and everything on there. Why we here is to have a safe space to actually start pulling the layers back and discovering a little bit more about ourselves and finding out what emotions and thoughts and ideas are ours and separating ourselves from how we were raised and socialized in our experience to being able to live as our authentic self, who we truly are. Generally, beginning of every show, we do some energy cleansing. And here for us, the energy cleansing that we do is we do a little sound bowl, we'll do some breath work, and then we'll do a meditation as well. It's something I wrote a statement for the family, but I don't know if I want to use it in our chakra cleansing or later on when we get to moving. So I'm going to just stick with how we normally do it. So at this point, hopefully you are in a space where you can relax and do the breathing exercise and visualization with us. If not, we're going to enjoy it. This week we are back on our crown. We started back over. Crown, of course, makes sense. It resides right above here. So it's your head. It's your thought. The element for your crown is thought. The color is violet. Now, purple, how you like to say. If you are into stones, you want to think selenite, amethyst, moonstone, diamonds are good, clear quartz, things like that. If you are into aromatherapy, then you want to think frankincense, rosewood, myrrh, sandalwood, lavender, things like that. That's relaxing. The crown represents your consciousness, your spiritual connection, and it is your direct connection to that sacred knowledge, that divine knowledge once you tap into that. All right, so that's that. Now, if you're relaxed, I think we're going to do I want to do 369 breathing today. We haven't done that in a minute, and I just feel like this might be a good time for that. So we learn to retrust our spirit and things like that. So relax for a second and then enjoy the sound bowl, and we get started with the breathing. Family must be doing well with our communication. I hope you've had a week where you've been able to say things you haven't been able to. You've had a little clarity in how you think and your thought process. You had a little confidence in being able to say the things without being seen as criticizing. So I just checked that because the bowl vibration noise was loud. So that's why I just want to let you know that you must be doing a great job at communicating. I know for myself, I had to pat myself on the back because I was in a space where I had to communicate a boundary, and I communicated that boundary and didn't get stuck in that space of guilt for creating that boundary. You know what I'm talking about? Hey, Kat, I know you've been communicating, so as a matter of fact, that might be part of it too. Um, yeah, we get started. Let me stay focused before I start talking to you and forget what I'm doing. So next we are going to do our breathing exercise. And for the breathing exercise, we're going to do 3, 6, 9. That is, you take a deep breath, you hold your breath for 3 seconds, and then you release. Take another one, hold for 6, release. Take another one, hold for 9, then release. But all you have to do is just focus on your breathing, focus on your breathing, filling your lungs with as much air, and releasing some of those tensions and negative energy that you may have had from your day today. Right? So hopefully you can relax. And on the count of 3, we'll start. 1, 2, 3. Take a deep breath in. Breathe in as deep as you can. And then hold for 3, 2, 3. And release. Take another deep breath in, as deep as you can get it, then hold for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then release. Take a deep breath in, hold for 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Release. Take another deep breath. Hold for 3 seconds. 2, 3. Release. Take a deep breath. Hold for 6 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last one, family. Take a deep breath. Hold for 9 seconds. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And with your eyes closed, I want you to be mindful of your thoughts. Our visualization is going to be simple today. And it is just you being mindful of your thoughts and being clear of your thoughts and clearing your mind of your thoughts. And repeat this affirmation at me. So with your relaxed state, repeat these affirmations after me. I am divine. I am connected to the universe. I am at peace. I'm a spiritual being. I release doubt and welcome faith. I am divine. I am connected to the universe. I am at peace. I am a spiritual being. And I release doubt and welcome fear. Faith, excuse me. We don't welcome fear. We let go of fear. Hopefully you ain't hear that. I know your spirit did. Your spirit's like, what? Well, we're going to get this party started. Move this over. All right, so this week's going to be a little interesting. We have been talking about generational curses a little bit. And one of the reasons we had started that conversation is because we hear a lot of discussion around generational curses. People saying they are breaking generational curses, but I recognize that in those conversations, a lot of times we don't create the space to be able to name what those generational curses, or we wind up naming the symptoms of the curse and not necessarily the curse itself. So we started thinking about that. As a matter of fact, I identified one for my family, which was guilt. A lot of my family is dealing with the guilt for various things, and the burden of that guilt has manifested in various different ways. And also for my family, I realized that guilt is connected to envy, in the sense that we do really feel sad that we didn't have certain things in our lives, and a lot of families have that, but for my family it affected pretty much everybody. So what we're trying to do is, your family may have guilt and worry, excuse me, guilt and envy as your thing. How you recognize that? You just really think about how you feel after interacting with your family, making decisions for yourself, things like that. What kind of responses do you get? How do they treat you? What do they say about your choices and the things you do for yourself? Those are questions that you ask that'll wind up helping you identify what your generational curse is. So, with this episode, the title is From Generational Curse to Generational Blessings. One of the things we want to be mindful of, especially, is recognizing our generational curses. Some of our curses don't come from just our family, but being socialized in a certain system for generations also affects you, right? So, for example, we want to shift. We use a lot of negative language, right? And one thing we want to be mindful of is how we communicate with ourselves and each other. And we want to be making sure that we're using a language that is not a language of divisiveness, but a language that actually brings people together, right? So those words, generational curses, can be very triggering and divisive, because they put that negative spin and negative energy on there. But what we're going to shift is from our generational curses to being able to identify the blessings that we have. Because what we all understand is our gifts that we were given can be a gift and a curse. Our blessings can be a blessing and a curse. So if we feel like we have generational curses, what blessings, what burden, what weight from those blessings make us feel like it's a curse? The duality. Funny, this week I've been having a conversation that was, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you the story. We were having a conversation in men's group. It's going to be a short story, so it doesn't matter. We were having a conversation in men's group. And for so long on this healing path, and I think many of us have fallen into this type of mindset or thinking, in the sense that we think our issue in healing and our trauma has destroyed our confidence, right? But many of us still go out there and take risks and do things that required you to have confidence. So what have your experiences broken down? What has been changed about you? Where we were misidentifying confidence, for many of us, is our esteem. For myself, I recognize how I have the ability to take risk. I have the ability to take chance. I analyze them. I face my fears, and in the face of fear, I still take those chances, right? And I recognize that a lot of people in Soul Family and a lot of people that we work with, the energy has been conducive for us to take risks that we wouldn't normally take. So a lot of people are taking risks. So then my question becomes, is confidence what needs to be rebuilt? For some people, confidence will be it. But for those who align with me and understand what I'm saying, it may not be confidence for us. It may be our esteem, right? So, for example, how it wound up spinning to me. I wound up having this interaction and with a woman. And in this interaction, I was providing understanding, a safe place to communicate, even when those situations came up where new emotions arrived and we didn't always express them in a healthy way. I was understanding of that, right? But at one point, I needed to draw a boundary. And on this healing path, you know, if you've been here for a while, we've discussed how boundaries was an issue for me. I would feel so guilty for drawing a boundary that was good for myself, right? So I go to this point and I draw a boundary, and of course, this person doesn't want a boundary. They're not used to get receiving boundaries. Many people think that men don't have boundaries because we do have a tendency to let our boundaries be infringed upon for the sake of peace. And I use peace loosely because a lot of times as men we confuse quiet with peace, right? Or even as women, a lot of times as people, we confuse quiet with peace and also agreement. So I wound up having this conversation where I had to draw a boundary. And me drawing my boundary really wasn't telling them what they could or could not do. I didn't like the way they were talking to me. So I told them my boundary. For us to be able to continue talking, I cannot be an emotional punching bag. So that's the boundary I drew. Of course, people who are empaths don't always realize how they trauma dump on other people and start treating people like emotional punching bags. And I recognize that this was the issue here, but also they weren't in a space to be able to receive what I was saying. And at that point, it seemed as though I was infringing on their freedom to be authentic to themselves, which I respect. Once we say our things, we can't always be able to decide how somebody might receive it. So, needless to say, we stopped talking, right? And the funny thing about that is, normally in these situations, I have the confidence to say something. But then I'd wind up feeling so guilty and overthinking the process, like maybe I didn't do the right thing, and then those fears of missing out start showing up and all of that. But it was funny. In this space, while I'm trying to process, I recognize that I might need a help to get out this space of guilt, because that's the cycle I'm trying to break from my family. And recognizing the cycle will allow you to recognize when you actually need help. And then confidence doesn't keep you from asking for help. Esteem does, right? So I reach out to my homeboy and I'm telling him the story or whatever, so forth and so forth. And it's ironic because in the conversation with the woman, one of the things that we discussed was what is a non-negotiable for you? What is something that you need in a relationship? And they use this word authentic. Well, that's cool for me because I've been working the last 2 years on becoming my authentic self. So now when somebody says they require authenticity, I confidently stand up because I know that I've taken away the ideas that aren't mine. I've taken away a lot of the socializing that isn't reflective of the man I want to be. I've done the work to peel back the layers. So at this point, I feel pretty good when somebody says that, right? And the ironic thing, in having that conversation with my homeboy, I tell him this, authenticity. And it's funny because it came up again, even in our men's group. I tell him this. And when I tell him this, I'm like, you know what? That is probably the most authentic I've been in any type of dating situation, right? Even drawing the boundaries before, when I would draw boundaries, I would be so worried about the outcomes and hoping that the person doesn't talk to me any of that does continue to talk to me in any of those things. But what I recognize now is that even though I drew that boundary, and even though it actually brought the demise of our connection at that point, I actually felt good about myself. My esteem was good, still high, in the sense that I knew I had other opportunities coming. I knew that was the most authentic I had been in my life, so I can pat myself on the back. I was proud that I actually was able to vocalize my boundary, even though I knew the risk would be there that they would not see the boundary or would not be able to receive what I was giving them. I was proud to be able to even say that, right? So I recognized that I recognized that I was able to navigate out of those that energy of guilt. And I was able to recognize that I had resources that I could use to help me navigate these emotions that I struggled to navigate on my own. And it wasn't until the men's group that we brought up that esteem. And I recognized the reason why I still felt good about it is because it improved my esteem. I had the confidence to be able to say it, but now I'm not spinning and cycling in this, what did I do wrong? Could I have done something better? All these what if questions that keep you stuck and imprisoned by your own thoughts, right? So I ain't have that. And I know I didn't have that because I was able to reach out and get the resources. Now that isn't to say that these thoughts and things don't still cross my mind. They do. But now when they cross my mind, I'm able to move forward because my esteem is high. You're not going to win them all. You get to try again another day. All these things make me feel better. And also, what makes me feel good is because I was picking and responding, dating with the man I'm going to be, the man I am. It was the most healed thing for me. So I tell that story so that you can take some time to see if you identify that maybe confidence is your issue. Maybe your esteem needs a little more work than your confidence. And esteem really shows is how you feel about yourself after you make a mistake. Not when everything is going well. How do you talk to yourself after you make a mistake? What do you think about yourself after you make a mistake? After you make several mistakes, do you continue to keep trying or do you opt out altogether? That is related to your esteem, not necessarily your confidence, because plenty of people have the confidence to recognize what they need, but they do not have the skills to be able to navigate their emotions. And one thing that I was thinking about that might be important, might be important, is important for this. One of the reasons why we are naming these generational curses is because they become a wall. One of the reasons we are doing this healing process is because we have created walls with the best intention, or blockages, barriers, whatever we want to call them, standards that actually keep us from our own dreams. The things that we have created to protect us have become our prison. And in that prison, we only know what it looks like on the inside, but we have no idea how we are presenting ourselves to the world when we are behind bars. So that is why we're doing all this, because we want to make sure we create or reach a space of freedom when we freed our dome, right? So, message to my people. Show topics, we're going to do some random conversations, and then we're going to get into those generational curses. Tonight, I got 11. I don't know if we're going to get through 11, but we're going to try as many as we can. My plan is to at least do 10. but we'll see how that go. You know, we like do fluid, stay fluid, and respect to the energy. So if we get a little drained by then we can stop whenever. We can pick up next week. But one of the messages I want to give to you is about this idea of perfection. And I say this because I recognized in this conversation, I actually even got on live the other day to talk about this perfection. Because in my life, I've ran into this idea of perfection only occasionally. So I really didn't think I had a issue with perfectionism. So I have these two people who wind up telling me, you're not perfect. One of them is a friend that I've known for 20 years. And it's wild because whenever she would say that, I never understood that. To this day, I still don't think I do. I was going to say I think it's a dumb thing to say, but I don't think it's dumb. But I do think it's short-sighted, right, to tell someone that they're not perfect. And I say that it's because it's the same reason why I couldn't understand. Why would you tell me something that I already know? I literally am paying for my mistakes. And sometimes we pay for the mistakes of others. So why would you tell me that I'm not perfect? And of course, there are a multitude of reasons. So I did some work when my first friend started telling me that, and I was thinking it was something like maybe I'm not comfortable with the fact that I have flaws, right? So I worked on that, and I tried to become comfortable with the fact that I know I have flaws, or in better wording, I grew comfortable. I came to an agreement. I was able to reconcile with myself that I am imperfect, and imperfect is okay. Like CeeLo has one of my favorite albums by CeeLo Green is The Imperfect Imperfections. And that describes each and every one of us. So when I first was facing this idea of you're not perfect, I was like, of course, that doesn't make sense. So I did the process. I do this thing. And then maybe 5 years later, it shows up again in this one conversation. And I've had tons of conversations. Now, I know that the second time had a different motivation. Or they might have the same motivation. I don't know what their motivation was. But I know how I received it. I know the best way to get messages from God, the universe, whatever you follow, the energy is from humans, right? So now I hear this, you're not perfect, and I'm thinking, you don't have to tell me I'm not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. I've already done the work to come to terms with my perfect imperfections. But then I recognize that we are doing this generational curse thing. And I step back and I think, well, maybe this word is poking out to me because it's something that is bigger than me, right? And what I recognized is, since I'm in this healing and this word pops up, it gave me a space to be able to talk about how perfectionism has infected our people, our culture, right? And I can think specifically as a black man, one of the ways that perfectionism has affected us, and it's not exclusive to black men, this is a black woman thing, this is a black people thing. One way that perfectionism has affected us was with good intentions. I remember growing up, and many of you had, where we were learned and taught that we got to be 10 times better, run 10 times faster, work 10 times harder, just to get what average people get. And that right there is the foundation of our perfectionism. Because now we feel like we got to work 10 times as hard run 10 times as faster. And when these times come where life gives us a break, we actually look at that like that's a dangerous thing. Because that pause, that break makes us feel as though we are behind schedule. We are behind. And how many of the people that you know are running hard, playing hard, doing all these things to be successful, which is guising our perfectionism? How hard are you on yourself when you don't achieve one of your goals? How hard have you worked in your life? Do you believe that you got to work 10 times harder, run 10 times faster? How has that idea affected you, right? A bunch of different ways. And then another way that I've recognized how this perfectionism has affected us as a people is when we are imperfect ourselves and we feel a certain way about ourselves, we have the tendency to look for the imperfections in other people, right? And the bad thing about that is we'll take those imperfections and decide that that person is no longer worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of a future. And it's really what it boils down to is that we are hyper self-critical to the point that we are hypercritical of others, where we don't allow ourselves to create this space for healing and open communication, for reciprocity, right? And the last thing I want to say is I recognize that in my life I faced with that a bunch. I never really thought that people thought I was perfect until they found my imperfections. And the amount of disappointment they would have because they found the imperfection, right? And it was crazy. So I recognized one of the reasons these people were pointing out that I wasn't perfect is that they approached me looking for perfection. And in this space, I need to say, and something that you need to absorb into your bones, into your spirit, so you can establish this with people when they look at you, because I know you experience people looking at you for perfection. If you're looking at me for perfection, if you come to this space, this energy, anything, looking for any of us to be perfect, we don't have it for you. Because what we are flawed humans, living, breathing people who are trying to become the best version of ourselves. And that includes flaws and all. So we are not doing this work to leave our flaws. We are doing this work to embrace our true selves. And as we come here, I want you to understand this is a shared environment. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. But together, we learn a lot. We create a symbiosis and an exchange. And although it may not always be even, the exchange is always there. I always look at myself as a servant leader. And God knows if anybody who's on my staff is here now in the chat, you'll be able to co-sign about this. How I was a servant leader in the sense that even though I was the leader, I knew the best way to bring the best out of people was to serve them. Make their job easier. Give them the support they need so they can achieve goals. Because if they look good, I look good. So here we are creating servant leaders because we understand that serving others improves us. Submitting to others improves us. So in this space, you will not find perfection. You will find people trying. And I want you to really take some time and think about that. How have people looked at profession at you and been disappointed? One way I give you a real life example so you can start thinking about it. I'm a nerd, right? And I know a whole lot about a whole lot of things, which is another reason why these people would tell me you're not perfect. Because I knew a whole lot about everything. And then you can ask me the right question, and I don't know nothing about it. So people who interact with me get comfortable with me knowing the answers because they know I've done the work to the point where if I say it, they don't even research it. They just take it because they know I've already done that work for them. And I always tell you to do the work for yourself. I lost my train of thought. Sorry, fam, I lost my train of thought. We're going crazy on here. Cat, don't laugh at me. What was I thinking? Disappointment. So what winds up happening is I get it all the time with one of my friends, one of the soul family specifically. They'll ask me a question. And then when I don't know, they're like, oh, you don't know? Why are you disappointed? I don't know everything. So what I recognize that the people who say that to me, they thought I was perfect. And their hearts are so broken when they find out I'm not. You know what I mean? So most people don't say that to me because they already know I'm imperfect, especially once I start telling my stories. They be like, boy, you done made some mistakes. Yes, I have some huge mistakes. But I've learned some valuable lessons. So when you do that, make sure you think about your life and how people have looked at you with perfection. And then you wind up, how you figure out how they looked at you with perfection is those moments where people were disappointed in you. Like, why are you disappointed? What were you expecting? Right? And for here, if you're looking for the perfect person, I heard they died on the cross. My homeboy, I never forget. True story. I got a homeboy. If you watching Ali, there's a shout out for you, G. But I'll never forget. I was dating this girl, a stylist specifically. And my homeboy and her worked at the same shop, right? And one day she happened to be in the shop talking about me. Fairly, right? And she had her complaints because I'm not perfect. People will have complaints, right? But I guess my homeboy didn't think that they were. He didn't think that those were the flaws that would make me unlovable, right? So as she say these simple flaws, so he says to her, oh, I thought you found Jesus and was looking for a man. Essentially telling her there are no perfect men. If you go looking for flaws, you will find them. So when people look for flaws in me, they will find them. And the only people who really start looking for flaws in me are the people who are led by fear. They are afraid that they would fall in love, they would love or care for me or something like that, and I would break their heart. So they think they are being proactive. You remember those walls I said? But they're not. They're just being judgmental, living in their own prison. Right. So the next thing I want to talk about, I ran into this idea. It's funny because we're still talking about this story. This idea of my heart's wants versus my duty, right? So essentially, you know, family, we on here healing and we're in this space of trying to grow. So I had somebody reach out to me and ask me about a Reiki session, right? And if you don't know, I'm single, never been married, don't have kids, things of that nature. So to some people, I'm an eligible bachelor, right? And I knew when I got into Reiki that some people think the best thing that they can give you is their body. Right. Um, so going into Reiki, I already knew. Me and my homeboy established this. Like nobody can pay with P. You. Let me specialize because P stand for a couple of things. Nobody, you're not gonna be able to pay me with PU, right? Black man, I appreciate you being here, Terrence. We on a good one today too. So we just getting through my random talks, but man, we on a good one. We're gonna try to identify some of these generational curses we dealing with. Um, what was I telling you? I had somebody reach out for me Reiki, so I'm single, don't have kids, and all those things. One of the things that I envisioned for my own life is why we did the homework for what you want your love life to look like is family. I'm one of those people who are huge on family, right? And it's ironic because I seen this post on TikTok the other day where this woman was talking about she don't get behind. She's not she doesn't mess with anybody who ain't about family. So for me to explain that is I'm not so pro man that I'm not pro women and children too. I worked in an environment dominated by women. I'm not so pro women that I'm not pro man. I'm not so pro children that I'm not pro mother and father. I am pro family. So everything I do is to help to rebuild the family unit. And I find it red flags. Like I think everybody should focus on their own thing, but I noticed there's a tendency for many of us to choose a side because we've been socialized to think that we don't need the other side. We think our money will replace our wives or our money will replace our husband. But children need both. This is why our children are in the state that they are in, wearing sweatshirts in the middle of the summer, because the adults have lost value of the importance of the opposite sex. So when you come here, even though I will say some things at times that seem pro man, or I'll say some things at times that seem pro women, please understand, you stay here long enough, we are about pro family. This is why we are healing ourselves, so we can pass down, heal these generational blessings instead of so many curses that our family could not break, right? So the funny thing about this, as I'm talking about the Reiki or whatever, the synchronicity of life is amazing. Me and this woman is connecting on almost everything. We want the same things. We got the same visions. I'm like, oh, that's easy. You got the same, your ideas are in alignment with my vision. So we fit in each other very well. I know how she fits in mine because I can hear her. And I'm telling her how I can support her so she can hear mine. Everything is going perfect, right? And because of that, I got a little lost in the sauce. And that fear of missing out, that triggered, all that stuff showed up. Even though I was hesitant to believe, I really did think that that was my old self showing up. But now I recognize through that interaction how easily I can be persuaded off my mission. The wants of my heart can stray me away from my duty. And I need to be aware of that. Not to say that love, family, dating, those things will take me off my path, because they won't. They will enhance the path that I'm on, only make it better. But I do need to be able to recognize at points where my path is the most important thing, right? And I think in that interaction, I might have messed up a little bit because we have truth and vulnerability by not having that boundary, not having that understanding in the beginning. So when I try to move back, because people need energy work. I can read your energy. I can just talking to you. I can tell you need energy work. And I knew this person, the people that are attracted to me are the most angry. When I say attracted to me, I don't mean dating. I mean to energy work. I'm very good at helping you manage your anger. Why? Because I am angry. So I know how to put names to that. So I got a tendency to attract angry people, right? So after recognizing that, it was huge to see how easily that I can be swayed off my path, right? And now having that tool, being able to recognize that clarity, I can still date and interact with people, but I got to make sure we're going in a proper process, right? So that proper process would have been in a space where we can actually work on some healing. Most of us, as a matter of fact, I told my friend, I said, if a girl come to me, she broken. Not saying that she can't be healed, because if she comes to me, she's on that healing path. But everybody who lays on my table is broken. If you're not broken, you don't need me. Generally, most of the people are starting out, so they're not even in that space of maintenance for their mental health. They're starting out, so I recognize that people are broken. And I recognize that I get a lot of angry people because I was angry, and that anger manifests in so many different ways. So the one lesson I learned is how easy I can be persuaded. And I say this to you because you need to take the time to recognize, are there ways, can your heart's wants persuade you from your duty? Because once you start this path of healing, as we talked about, like the 5%ers say, each one teach one. We have a responsibility to share what we have learned and give people the space to be able to receive and accept it or reject it and deny. That's their choice. That's their option. That's their God-given right. Now, as I talk about this and I recognize how different levels of anger come towards me, I'm learning. As a matter of fact, it gave me the opportunity to be able to put words to my non-negotiables. Up until this point, if somebody would ask me, what's your non-negotiable in a relationship? I'd give some long drawn out, I don't know. Because I've always been such an understanding person. Like I said it in the live the other night. I remember I used to live without boundaries. My understanding was allowing me to accept anything. And I could understand a lot of things in context. But then I learned understanding does not mean acceptance, right? So when it came to time to be able to name my non-negotiables, I didn't know what they were. Because I had been so accepting of so many things, and I didn't want to say anything like cheating, loyalty, all those cliche things, because I know that's so contextual. And there's a role that I can play in that creates a foundation for that, right? So in learning my non-negotiables and learning this, I learned that there is some anger. There are some emotions that are too much for me to deal with. Not saying that I don't have the tools, but am saying that it doesn't necessarily need to be in the energy that we are creating together. That anger is for someplace else, and I can recognize that. So in saying that, I recognize my new non-negotiable is, no matter how hurt, no matter how broken, I cannot become your emotional punching bag. Even if I understand where they're coming from, that is a non-negotiable for me. So I'm thankful about that, because now if somebody asks me, I got clarity through that situation of being able to find out I'm not perfect, but people see perfection in me. And I know it's true because through college, somebody used to call me Black Jesus. Esteem is the real issue, not confidence. How easy we all can be strayed off our path by our heart's wants and my non-negotiables, which is huge. Huge. I'm questioning, what's your non-negotiables? If you got some time, don't forget, put something in the chat. Tell me some non-negotiables that you may have. Maybe we can have a discussion about that. Something else I learned as of recently, and I've actually kind of talked about it, but I didn't really have any real life examples. But I got a real life example now, which is interesting. So what I'm learning is the more you heal, the more triggering you will be. So as we move from a space of triggered, we will move into a space of triggering. And then at some point, we'll move from that space too. And I don't know what that space is going to be because we're going to move there together, right? And I say this because I recognize some of the ways that I've lived my life and the cliches that I say can strike a chord in people who may have the same intentions to be able to heal that space, but have not yet done the work. So one way that I recognize this is through sex and sexuality. So, do I want to talk about that? Yeah, it fits in perfect. So one way I've grown is through sex and sexuality, right? And it's funny. It's funny because now that I've really lived authentic to myself and with the sexual discipline, and not even just sexual discipline, but I do think better of myself. I think I'm worth more than just a vagina. I'm worth more than just a experience. I am worth a heart, a mind, and a soul. So I recognize that about myself. Right. And I wound up seeing this thing online that said emotionally broken people are promiscuous. And I remember conversations around that promiscuity. And I would downplay it, right? So I'm a sucker for love. I'm one of those people who we get the kissing and the hugging, we go together next week. You feel me? I recognize that many of our people function in their sacral and they think that's the thing that they should give. Like, here, I gave you this. I think even part of some of my reactions or some of my experiences is some people have never experienced rejection when they want to give their body to someone, right? So now, as I'm listening to this promiscuity thing, I'm thinking about my own life, and the part that sticks out to me is the emotionally broken, emotionally broken, emotionally broken, emotionally broken. That's what it sounds like an echo. And I was like, dang, I was emotionally broken. And the only way that I can see how emotionally broken I was is because I actually started doing the work, my sacral work, and creating and working on my sexual discipline, right? And that doesn't mean I had sex with a lot of people or had sex wildly or freely, but I can recognize the times where I didn't really even want to interact with that. But I did it for guilt feelings, for a multitude of feelings, because I was emotionally broken, right? And I would accept that, even though I knew the girl I dated women that I know didn't have their hearts in it. And I grew to love them the same. And all that I was getting was a shell of that woman. And I thought that was enough. So between dating, low self-esteem, not recognizing I'm more valuable, I'm worth more. Some women, some people they'll treat you like that's all you were. I see people confused on how they're being used just for their body. Men specifically, because they don't think that happens. But there are plenty of times people don't think you're worthy of a relationship, but they'll have your body, which shows that we are twisted. People who won't kiss but share their body, twisted. Get in relationships, have unprotected, but still won't give somebody their heart. Sending out mixed signals, and then we wonder why we cannot get the love, the respect, the cherish, the loyalty that we deserve, because we are not living as our authentic selves. And we are hiding our most attractive, most magnetic, strongest energy spot we have, and that's our heart. So I recognize that, dang, I was broken because I was promiscuous. But now I'm not. But I don't know how people see that, because you don't know I'm not giving you my body until I feel safe enough to give you. You don't know that if you meet me, right? But it's wild. So the thing that kind of helped me recognize that is I was having a conversation about intimacy, about sex. And we started having conversations about when the last time we got tested, all this stuff. And one gift I give to myself every birthday is to go to the doctor. And I make sure I got one more year. So my birthday's in February. Last time I got tested was in February. But since then, I haven't been intimate. Right. So I'm talking to this person about intimacy, and we sharing. We even going as far as my charts and all this stuff. And I say something that I recognize that we can be very triggering. And I only recognize it now because I seen the energy. I felt the energy change in this conversation after I said this. So I'm talking to somebody who's on the same path as us. We trying to be healers. We trying to live our life. We trying to create an environment so other people can heal. And as we shared this, I said, I know mine's in February, but I'm still good because I haven't been having intercourse. And then I said, because I realize if I can't give them my heart, I can't give them my body. Giving somebody my body without my heart only causes the pain that I wish to avoid, because I'm not living authentically. So I said, I don't give them my body. If they not worth my heart, I don't give them my body. And I said this to this woman, and then she has to immediately tell me how it ain't true for her. Even though she thinks we're on the same path, we're healing, we're doing all this thing, now she has to tell me how she doesn't value her body and heart the same way. And that is triggering. And I never would have really recognized that until I experienced that, how my healed self, my healed parts can be triggering to the unhealed parts in people. Or it does reveal their true identity. Are they really healing or using a mask, right? And I say this to you so you'll recognize the more places you healed, you start talking about your relationship with your father that's better. You start talking about your relationship with your mate that's better. You start talking about your relationship with your kids that better. If I don't have a good relationship with my children, it might trigger me. If I want a good relationship with my children, it might trigger me. So I say this to you so you start recognizing this, so you be thoughtful in your interactions with people. Be proud of the work that you've done. but recognize the language that you use may cause the trigger that you just broke, right? I think I already talked about confidence and esteem, so we're not gonna talk about that again. We got notes, family. We're working hard. What y'all think about the perfect imperfections? Or have you noticed that your healing has become triggering to some people at this point? I did that. The funny thing, I wrote this note down to myself, right? Because we always talk about how hurt people hurt people. And that is very much true, right? But the thing about that I realize is hurt people who are already hurt. Because if you are living your authentic self and living in a healthy nature, those people know how to recognize hurt people. So they can draw different boundaries that we never had. I remember sometimes I would see the hurted people and would think, oh man, you just got an abandonment wound. All you need is somebody to show you that they'll be here for you and you'll be better. But somebody who's healthy doesn't even think like that. They might point you to resources. They might support you in your healing, but they do not bind themselves to you. So I always find it ironic if you ever find yourself in a position where you starting to feel like you were hurt by this person or you were bamboozled by this person, please take pause and think about the hurt that you have that allowed you to think that that was a good idea. As a matter of fact, I was on the show with a friend the other day, and we were talking about, she asked a great question. And she said, let's say somebody been in jail 10 years, they just got out. Would you date them? Right? And I understand this is one of those things where men and women can see it a little differently, right? So I understand the perspective of people saying, yeah, they deserve a second chance. I thought that too. You know what I mean? And then when it comes around to me and they ask me that, I was like, hell nah. Right? And then another question came that was a very good question because it made me define what hell nah was. And they asked me, so let's say you've been dating this girl for 6 months, and then in the 6th month, she tells you that. What would you do? She just told me our relationship is over. Because I used to function with no boundaries. In the sense that I thought that would be okay for me. But now I understand that understanding does not mean acceptance. So just because I understand someone's situation, that does not mean I have to bring them into my home, which is my heart. So I think that was a great thing in being able to identify that, because it proves that hurt people who are already hurt. If you are willing to bring that into your home, you are a hurt person. And your understanding is blinding you to your hurt. Don't let that understanding blind you to your hurt. Okay, let's get to the, oh man, dang. I done talked y'all head off and we ain't even got to the generational curses. We're going to pick them up next week, but we're going to do some anyway. So as we're looking at these generational curses, again, I told you a lot of times that they are misidentified, and we will talk about the symptoms, the blood from the wound, but not the wound itself, right? Excuse me. Woo, I'm so gassy. As we go forward in discussing the generational curses, we're also going to try to figure out the inverse. What blessing is burdening us that is manifesting as this curse, right? So like the guilt, my family is connected to the empathy. My family is always worried about somebody taking advantage of their niceness. My family can directly tell you they are kind-hearted people, and they are, but they can be very vicious in protection of their kind-hearted nature. So for me, I understand the reason why I feel so guilt is because I'm so empathetic. And empathy is a blessing, not a curse. The guilt I felt from not living authentically as myself, the burden is the curse, right? Not the blessing. The way we want to frame this discussion is basically on 3 questions. We want to think about what behaviors or beliefs in my family cause the hurt, the harm. Then we want to think about what do I want for myself. Appreciate the follow, family. Well, I know you on Twitch. CEO, I appreciate you. Good shout out. And dead serious side note, that's the first time it popped up on screen. I get follows several times, but it doesn't pop up on screen like I needed to. So thanks for showing me that it works good on Twitch, family. Welcome to the Soul Swami. We just talking about healing here, family. So if you're looking for some healing, don't look for perfection. Look for people growing to be their most authentic self. That's what we do here. So we want to frame this in 3 questions. What behaviors and belief systems in my family has caused this harm? What do I want for myself, for my children, my legacy, and what do I want to do different? And what resources do I need to achieve this? So the first generational curse that we're going to discuss is abuse and trauma. Now, that is a very vague word. Even though they have definitions, there are so many things that can be considered abuse and trauma. So we're going to stream that down. I want us to think about it in a couple of ways. One way, we want to talk about physical abuse. You want to think about physical abuse and emotional abuse. And then you want to think about neglect and abandonment. So I'll start with neglect and abandonment. The funny thing about it is I grew up in that generation where we screamed from the top of the hills that we were latchkey kids. And you know what latchkey is? A form of neglect. So we haven't even recognized how our latchkey experiences have created an energy for neglect for us. Right? And if we think about it, we don't go back too far, too many generations. If you can chase your generation, your family back to the 1500s, congratulations. But we just want to think about being able to look at our family, to our immediate family, our cousins, up to our grandmothers. If you got a great grandmother, grandfather that's still around, then that's about as far. Right. So I remember during this time period, children were treated as though we were bills. Something to be provided for. We even talk about provision so limitedly now, where many children feel to this day that they are just something to be provided for. Parents really thought that because they had a roof over our heads, we had lights on and food to eat, their job was done. That's why they didn't even mind working a job that wouldn't allow them to be home with their children, to nurture them. Right? So when you think about that neglect, Think about some of these stories that you have professed to be fantastic to you. The stories that we turned our pain into to jokes and joy, and see if there's any issue around neglect within your own family. Some of these things that we talk about, we are literally pointing out our wounds, but because we understand the dynamics, we deny our feelings. Because we know our parents were doing the best that they could, we deny that we have any hurt from these situations that we experienced. Being a latchkey kid was not fun. We talk about it like it was great times because people have the tendency to look at the past with nostalgia, with rose-colored glasses. But that means there were a lot of children at home with no adult supervision, with siblings trying to figure it out. So we weren't even allowed the space to be children. We had to be adults because the adults just saw us as something to provide for. As long as I provide you with these things, you will be all right. And we'll get to it. Something that provide for. Abandonment can be very different. When you think about abandonment, some very obvious abandonment issues that we wind up dealing with our family is, I call them disappearing act dads. And although we talk about the disappearing act dads, we got disappearing act moms. How you know, I work with children and families all the time. A lot of times the babies are getting raised by the grandparents. That means mom is gone and dad is gone. Mom ain't stable, dad ain't stable. So we see those disappearing act families, which creates this sense of abandonment. Children who were raised by grandparents have a sense of abandonment, especially if they were a child. If you were a child in this dynamic where you had siblings, and some of the siblings were raised with the parents, and some of them got raised with the grandparents, there will be an abandonment issue. Is that how your family navigates? My family, if a child didn't have no kid in our family, went to the system. They went to the system, we went and got them. Family would take care of them. But that's partly because we all had an abandonment wound. In my family, the maternal and paternal links died so early, passed on so early, that the opportunity to be able to feel wanted, needed, and cared for was gone. So outside of that, think about those things. Also, when you think about abandonment, think about how many times you have abandoned yourself. Your dreams that you had growing up, are you living them? And who told you to abandon your dreams, right? Gives an example. I remember when I started, I majored in biology for school in college. So I had every intention on becoming a doctor. But somewhere along the line, life pushed me into education. And you won't believe how long people kept telling me to get out of education. When I say people, I mean family. Because the people I ran into thought I was an excellent educator. You're a great teacher. Your energy, all that. The only people who had questions about that was family. And they would project their fears on me. And this is one time I didn't abandon myself for what they thought was best for me. So also when you think about abandonment, think about all the times that you had to abandon yourself to get the approvals of your family. And then think about that. What were they saying? I know I heard things like, you can't make no money in that. Or you even hear your family share their dreams. My mom used to tell me all the time about how she wanted to be a doctor. And then she'll tell us why she abandoned her dream. If you have a family full of dreamers and you don't see those tangible dreams, it is because they have been taught to abandon themselves. Do not abandon yourself. The next thing we want to look at is physical and emotional. Many of us, the one that I'm not going to go deep on because there's a lot of conversations around this, is physical abuse. And a lot of times people see physical abuse only as extreme physical abuse. But physical abuse does not have to be extreme. Abuse is abuse, right? And the thing about it is, we know abuse is passed down in our generations because we are taught to put our hands, harm our own seeds in the name of guidance. But who taught you that was the way? Why did they think that was the only way? Where did they learn that it is best to physically put your hands on your children? How is that beneficial? And I know for many of us, we think because we are here as adults physically, we felt no harm. But many of us have adult physical bodies, but we are still emotional children. We are still spiritual children. We are still mentally children. Because those things froze the development in us, paused us. And it was only because they ain't know what else to do. Nor did they have the skills or resources to even find other ways to discipline children. It's not like they were growing up like us with AI or the internet where they can be like, what's the other way to discipline children? And now you know that it's been so ingrained in our culture that if you ever discuss gentle parenting, watch the venom you get. And then you also see people rationalizing why physically dominating your child is best for them. But when they go out in this world, you don't want nobody to do them. We send the mixed signal. I'll never lie. I remember every time I used to get a whooping, I used to hear, I'm doing this because I love you. Hey, Kelly. Right? I'm doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I love you. I'd also hear that you glad I'm doing it to you because them folk won't love you. I can't tell the difference. You are treating me just like people who don't love me would. People who don't love me, you know what they do? They put their hands on you, right? And then we have to step back and think about what lessons, what mixed signals are we teaching our children? So as I got older and began to date, I thought violence was normal, right? And I wasn't a physically violent person. But as we're talking about abuse, we're also thinking about emotions. I was definitely a emotionally violent person. And I can be very much physically violent, which is why I did things like wrestling, football, things like that. All those things that allowed me to get my violence out. To this day, I still got a thread of violence in me. And I know it's been passed down because we were taught this is how we handle situations. If I don't know how to communicate, if you're not understanding what I'm saying, if you do something I don't like, you use your own judgment, your own agency, I'm going to beat you back into space. which is the same thing they do to people on the chain gang or people in jail. Soon as they get out their space, they get beat back to it. So we recognize in abuse and trauma, how is physical used in your family? Do you come from a family that justifies physically assaulting their own seeds in the guise of helping them? Does your family use emotional abuse? Emotional abuse for children winds up being guilt tripping. A lot. Did I put that down? I wrote it down on something. We're going to talk about guilty parenting. So emotional abuse can wind up sounding like not respect for your feelings. Not respect for your agency. Like, remember when you was a kid and you be like, I want to do this? And them parents be like, don't do that. Emotional abuse is telling your children that you're going to beat them because you love them. Emotional abuse is when your child cries, you tell them, don't cry. The world gonna be hard. So you're going to be hard on your child instead of nurturing them so they can flourish. So think about the ways that emotions were used in your own family. Were emotions suppressed? Were you in a space where you were not even allowed to discuss emotion? Nobody modeled the emotion conversations with you. Nobody even had a clear understanding on how to navigate emotions, so they couldn't tell you in the first place. And what behaviors and beliefs do you still have from the neglect that you experienced, the neglect that was passed down to you, the abandonment from you abandoning yourself, the physical abuse, the whoopings that we laugh about now, the emotional abuse, the guilt that we felt for our dreams? Are you arguing for things that are counterproductive to your healthy self? Are you holding on to things that won't be good, that did harm to you as a child, and you're doing it to your child? How many of your beatings or spankings did you like? How many of them really taught the lesson that you needed them to learn? It didn't. It just taught you to be sneaky and that you can't talk to your parents because they don't know how to handle their own emotions, so they definitely won't be able to handle yours. That is why your child is wearing a hoodie in the summer. They don't feel safe to even you. Right? Outside of that, not only do you want to take that time to be able to identify what beliefs that you still hold on to, what behaviors are you still holding on to from your physical abuse and trauma, your emotional abuse and trauma, your neglect and abandonment. You want to think about, what do you want to do differently? How do you want to raise your children? What type of legacy do you want your children to have? Do you want your children to be trying to get over all the trauma you gave them with your good intentions? What we say, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Intentions don't matter. Outcomes do. Do you want your child to be physically grown, but emotionally stuck in the age where they receive the most whoopings? What do you want to do different? And as you experience, I love Triple P. I'm sorry, I just realized, look, Kelly, I saw that triple up there and I ain't read the P. So you know I'm biased. This is funny. I'm glad Kelly is here because I can tell this story and she knows it's true. So I remember we took Triple P together. And it was, Triple P is the positive parenting program. So the next question that I was going to ask is, what resources do you need to be better? You know what parents don't like to get? parenting education. They talk about how there's no handbook to being a parent, but then actively seek no resources, no parent education, no foresight. It's all on the job training. And even a new job gives you an orientation period. Once that baby born, it ain't no orientation, right? So anyway, we taking this triple P, right? And we work with families, you know what I mean? We got our own families, things like that. So the conversation that we have, we deal with all the time, right? And that conversation is around kids hearing you. And we were talking, and it's funny because I was on a show last night, and the question was like, what do you think your biggest issue with your kids is? And a lot of people said communication. How many of you times have a parent has you like, my kid ain't listening, right? Because they're not doing what you said. And I'll never forget, we sitting in this group and we having these conversations about how hard-headed kids can be and how they're not listening. And the teacher, the person that's teaching us the triple P asked a very simple question. She was like, somebody said they act like they don't understand. And then she said, well, if they're not doing what you asked, do they understand? No, they're your children. They want your approval. They would do what you asked if they understood. And think about it. How many negative things do we speak in our own children's life when they don't? Like, if I tell you to get up and clean the kitchen, you don't get up and clean the kitchen, now I'm start calling you lazy. Emotional abuse, right? So what resources do you need to be able to be better? I'm biased. I love Triple P, Positive Parenting Program. One of the reasons I love Positive Parenting Program, Triple P, is because it is a tool to help you navigate being a parent. It gave us ways to be able to figure out the behaviors. If you got a child that just has a behavior that you don't know what to deal with, they gave us the tools. Because at that point, even as educators, I didn't even know all the tools to be able to use. So like if I got a kid that is acting out in the classroom, she gave us an idea of a journal, not for the kid, but for us. Start writing down times and days when that happens, because then we might be able to figure out a pattern. That is nourishing your children. That is pouring into their life, making sure that you are finding out the things that you need to be able to help them navigate their emotions. But so many of us live in this space of envy. We want to give our children better, but not too much better than us. We don't want to be better people. We just want to give our children more. We got addicted to consumerism. But as I said earlier, money does not replace family. Money does not replace family. And if you've ever lost a loved one and received an inheritance after losing that loved one, you know for a fact money does not replace family. All right. So think about we'll start back again next week with the physical, emotional, neglect, and abandonment. I'll run through what else we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about addiction, poverty, financial instability, relationship dysfunction, mental health disorders, educational barriers, limiting beliefs and cultural bias. I like that. Poor health habits, emotional suppression. That's the one I was thinking about. Toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. Gender roles that discourage vulnerability. How a man's supposed to be. The one that kills us is this idea of strength for both genders. No matter if you're a woman or a man, that idea of strength is discouraging to vulnerability. We'll talk about our fear-based decision making and shame and guilt cycles and a bunch more. After that, I got about 25 more. But today, I hope you got a little bit from it. I want you to think about how your healing can become a trigger for others. If you don't know your non-negotiables, I hope that you're creating the space or taking inventory of your experiences to be able to create healthy non-negotiables for yourself. Come to terms with your perfect imperfections. And the last thing I want you to know is you are valuable. You really do matter. And I know at times they don't see it. And I know at times you really want them to see it. Because everybody wants to be seen. And if you don't learn anything else from me, I want you to learn that you do not have to be perfect to be loved. You do not have to be perfect to be respected. The guilt of perfectionism is kicking our butt. But here, we're going to put that weight down so that we can live free. Family, I hope you received that. Again, I hope you had a great time. I hope to see you Thursday where we continue our reading of, what are we reading? Family, what are we reading? Makes me want to holler. If you can't make it Thursday for book club, I hope to see you back here next Tuesday as we continue our discussions from generational curses to generational blessings. I appreciate you and value the time that you spend here helping us to grow and heal. And I wish you many, many blessings and plenty of peace. Thank you for everything, family. I appreciate you.